a world that walks the line. There's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew. To break the equations, not down to any rule. Exposing to the world the universe's own view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool, to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a break, to a duel. The old man Bills was running through his head. Cheryl probably got it hiding under his bed. Penny up the ante, making power for days. Don't listen to a word that the straight dope says. Mike building batteries that power a ship. Victor comes in talking math, that's the water spiral dip. Sean chucking plasma bolts a mile long. Sheila on the video making tone trumpet prongs. Burning, breaking matter, they said it couldn't be done. And to all the people in the chat, I know you're having fun. So it's time to spend your Saturday with the dope and old man Bills.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Bills. Joe, what's going on, brother?
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday.
Oh, yeah. Wish it was a better Friday, but it's not. But, dude, it's going to get fun right now.
Hell
We're
yeah.
going to be talking about some very cool stuff that has to do with a little bit of resonance, some of the stuff in your brain, unlocking certain things that happen in there, and a whole lot more. Joe, you ready for this?
Yeah, man, let's fire it up.
All right. So one of the things that we always get across on this is a medical data, and we always stay the heck away from that. So none of this has to do with any type of that. We're just telling you what's going on in the process. So with that said, let's fire it up, Joe. What do you got?
All right, so kind of the conversation that Nathan and I were having was based on a video that we had seen recently that was correlating with a lot of the theories that we were bouncing around about how certain specific frequencies could be used to induce different biological processes, through sympathetic resonance and directed use. So what this video more or less showed, and I don't think that we're going to present it, but we could kind of sum it up, was they found a way to utilize magnetite micro particles. I believe it had to be a very specific size. It was like 40 nanometers in size. And what they did was they actually took that fine particulate and was able to coat it with a piezoelectric. And then they were able to put it into solution and make it as an injectable. And the purpose that they were using that for was to introduce it into the bloodstream in a way that could actually be carried by the blood cells. The whole purpose that they were doing with the piezo doped magnetite was to be able to have them hitch a ride on blood cells, but then induce a frequency and an electromagnetic field tuned to a specific frequency. Then what would ultimately happen is that magnetite would respond to the frequency, and it would actually make the cells in your bloodstream, which generally don't produce specific hormones, for instance, it would actually induce those cells to create other hormones that they don't typically produce. The reason that that's relevant is because, like, for instance, with somebody with diabetes, where their pancreas doesn't function, right? In certain circumstances, somebody with a working pancreas, you could induce through frequency the pancreas to create insulin, right? That's sort of known and still being worked on. But the question is, the people that have a functioning pancreas, they, don't need to be induced to create, insulin, right? So how do you get somebody who needs that function to be able to produce it? And this was their solution, because any cell that these particular nanoparticles could cling to could be induced to create that hormone. And you just got to bear in mind, these hormones, we look at them as chemical processes, but realistically everything within you works on the nervous system circuitry. It's all an electrical equation, so to speak, and some, for lack of a better way to put it. So, really what this is all doing is, completing circuits and creating a very specific outcome for it. So I thought that was like really fascinating.
Your brain is basically an electrical synapses that goes on, and it triggers different frequencies inside your body. So getting a chemical to release inside your body based on creating that same frequency. So it's like your brain triggering it is what it feels like to your body, but it's not. It's an outside source. You just added something there in order to be able to trigger that. So that's what's so fascinating about it is once they're able to do that, now instead of ingesting something, they can hit the spot directly with it and be able to tune it to you. So maybe in the future, what that means is they just take this little, little device, they stick it to your arm or something, and then it automatically tells things what to do. It's almost like nanites or something in your system is the way it comes across when you see it. You know what I mean? When you first talk about it, because it feels like that's what it's doing. You're telling something in your body to do something for you, and it's responding by releasing certain chemicals. Like it can release adrenaline, it can release, you know what I mean? Like you said, some kind of blood sugar combo, something like that. Could do some stuff like that. That's why it was fascinating when we watched it.
Right. And the other thing to do with it too is that because it's dependent on the frequency externally, being, putting pressure on that system, throwing it into resonance and creating that outcome, that frequency acts as an on-off switch for the production. So, in certain circumstances, like again, I think that insulin, diabetes and insulin is probably the easiest example to use, right? If you use too much insulin, or you don't cut off the insulin production when need be, then you just go to the other side of the scale, your blood sugar that just plummets and drops, and then that's not the ideal circumstance either. So something like this could continuously be monitored for the need, and then the frequency is just used as an on off switch of the production immediately, like eliminating the risk of like too much, so to speak, like because it would be an instantaneous shut off.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this also has an opportunity when you're dealing with severed limbs to potentially, and I say this potentially, maybe regrow some nerves in your body and stuff like that because you're triggering the synapse in your brain. So you're triggering something in your brain to operate something in your body. We usually do it unconsciously. We don't know that we're doing it. But this would help in that it would be set into that limb and then it would trigger as it's supposed to. It may be one of those situations where you have when they first do it, and I'd say not that they do it now, but if they were able to do it, then that would allow them to program things as they're being grown. Then they would program them to your actual brain chemistry.
Yeah, for certain. And like there's also a huge potential in this also that kind of coincides with what you're saying there too, because like we know that stem cells are very, very powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't always have the ability to have stem cells that, because it's very particular to you, and you lose them pretty much shortly after birth, and it just kind of how it goes. So that raises the question that if you're able to induce particular cells to perform functions that they don't typically do through this process, are you also able to then take other cells and trick them into believing that they're at a former cell, a former version of self, being in this case like a stem cell? Because if you could sit there and induce a regular cell into thinking it's a stem cell, then you could induce it to do whatever you please. And that's stuff that they do in the laboratory all the time. But the question is it something that you could modulate without having to preserve your stem cells in the first place? Because I'd love to know that. That's where regeneration comes in.
Bring it back to a 0 point before they got mutated at all. Because every cell, once it takes on a mutation, your body automatically rebuilds that same cell, and it makes copies of it continuously. So if you start with the fresh one, it makes the copies of the fresh one. As you get older, they get mutated. So it continues to produce the mutated cell, which brings you down health-wise in the end. So in order to stop that, you'd have to be able to reprogram it or start fresh. Like Joe said, zero that sucker out, man, and let's reprogram it back to where it is. That's amazing kind of tech.
That's it. And when it comes to like development, you hear an awful lot about before birth and after birth, but you don't really hear all too much about the processes that occur immediately at birth. Once a baby is out, the umbilical cord is cut, a whole series of processes are jump started because you have a baby or a fetus in that case, who was wholly dependent on the relationship in that case with the mother, that's now transitioning into being fully dependent on their own systems and functions. And the mechanism of that flip from one to the other, which is so dramatic, is the birth and the cutting of the cord, more or less. Once that's done, a whole bunch of things end right then and there, and the stem cells is one of them. So you no longer produce stem cells, and this is why they actually take it off the umbilical cord most of the time, because that remains fetal in nature, whereas the born child has already exited that phase. So it's that I think that's really critical. It's something to I'm sure they know a lot about, and I just don't. So it just makes it sound like nobody knows it. But like I think that switch is super fascinating, and is something that when you're looking at a moment in time that you'd want to shift back to for ultimate regeneration, healing, and health optimization, it would be that difference between 1 second on one side and 1 second on the other, and being able to go back to that prior state.
Well, this is one of those things that makes that integratron so fascinating when you look at it, and why he was building it the way he did. He basically shut off every frequency around him when you walk through there when that thing was active. So whatever frequency was running in there was running in resonance inside of a chamber. So what was he trying to induce in there? Which thing was he targeting? That's why I'm so fascinated with that machine every time I see it, because he said 2 minutes through it each day, no more. Don't do any more because it could be harmful. So was he targeting to kill something in your body? You know what I mean? And that would allow to regenerate. Was he targeting to open something up in your brain to allow a process to start and to kickstart, you know what I mean? And in order to get it to keep going?
Yeah, I think it's like kind of a balancing situation, right? So if you have different frequencies running through your nervous system that are not healthy frequencies, so to speak, and you're able to bring it into balance and then exit, and that's it. Because the thing about balance is, like you just said, if you don't go in there too long, well, if you go in there too long, you overcook the chicken. It's now you're just on the other side of it, and you're just out of balance, just in the opposite way. So by putting the system into a state of equilibrium, more or less, would maintain its efficiency and allow it to then heal. It's like anything else, right? When you're in a good place and it's neither good nor bad, you could you could hunt out what needs to be corrected. There's less noise in the system to distract the healing processes, the natural healing processes. So I think that's really what it has to do with in that context.
Well, so think about it this way. So that's the integratron. You walk through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Rife himself made a box that you go into, and a lot of people online talk about it, and there's old studies about it. And what he was famous for is he was making a microscope that would be able to see a bunch of very, very small microbes in your body. And then you'd be able to find out, you know what I mean, what kind of, the name is passing my mind right now, what kind of things are on your body, like, you know what I mean, insects or things like that, much, much smaller though. So, because here's the thing, you may not realize this, but you're in a symbiotic relationship with things on the outside of your body and things on the inside of your body that are alive. Okay?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think they said that our genetics is like actually less human than it is microorganism. We have more microorganism cells in our body than we have human cells at any given time.
Well, we have parasites, it sounds like a nasty word, but it's true. You have parasites inside your body, you have them outside your body. Some of them take care of certain functions, like removing skin from your body. You know what I mean? It eats the skin, things like that. And it sounds gross. You got things in your eyes, and then parasites get into your eyes. And then we're not talking the parasite that comes out of the big worm in your forehead or something like that when you go to a different country and flies land on you. No, we're talking very, very small. And what
Those
he
things
was
are
doing,
disgusting, by the way, just throwing that out there.
big time,
those
yeah.
things are gross,
He was
man.
using a microscope in order to find those kind of things, and he was finding a frequency in order to kill those things. So when he's sitting there and putting you in a box, man, what is he trying to do? Was he trying to get at those type of things? Those kind of things could, potentially, make you age because they grow and they keep going and they have a community and they get bigger. Then you start aging because your body can't get rid of them all. So there was a whole process to the thing he was trying to work on and get rid of there. So I don't know if he was successful or not. They shut him down. They wouldn't allow him to continue his research. He had some successful cases, and they pretty much tried to wipe it from history.
Right. I mean, whatever Rife was setting out to do was definitely more more focused than you were talking about before, where it's more of a balancing routine. Like he was doing stuff very, very specific and targeted with very specific frequencies. In an interactive plane, which was critical. It was that interactive plane that you would sit in within the box. And yeah, I mean, was he trying to shake microorganisms to death? I don't really know. I don't really think that he really stated exactly what was going on all too well. But I think that his results showed that it was whatever he was doing was effective, and we knew it had to do with frequencies and resonance. And that's the end of his research. They really shut him down good.
Yeah, big time. Well, it's got to be resonance. It can't just be a frequency. I know a lot of people think, I'll put on the tune in the background and frequency will affect me overnight. Not really the case. What they try to do is put a headset on you and get the frequency to bounce back across of each other to ear, so you get a resonance forming in it. One than the other. Boom, 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 just like that. So that's what they're working on and stuff like that. None of this stuff is just basic frequency. You would have already been affected by it. Your body just sheds it off. You know what I mean? Like your skin effect. It just basically boom. You know what I mean? Doesn't affect me, no problem. What it gets to is when you get resonance in something, now it starts to change things. It starts to change the way they interact with things, how things are doing near you, around you. Is it like a cellular exciter circuit? Does it try to resonate with everything in the environment around it, including you? Is it like a ZVS circuit where it has one frequency and it's very targeted and it only turns on things with that same frequency? That's why this is so fascinating, because if they're targeting, you know what circuit they're using. If they're in general working on something, right, then it's trying to do multiple things at once. So it sounds like they're finding what's working in a petri dish, and then they're applying that. And
Right.
this is not in human trials or anything by any means yet. This is just, you know what I mean, in the lab in a little petri dish. So, but fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one that we were talking about earlier with with that injectable, that's the second part of the equation there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were not in human testing, but like they did laboratory testing. That's it's more than just a petri dish. I mean, they're testing it on like lab rats and stuff like that. But
they didn't say though.
They didn't, but they implied that they were able to get the hormone production out of
So there must have been more to it.
Yeah, so I think that there was more to it. They didn't really go into the research all too much, but that was my sentiment walking away from it, was that they have some kind of biological indicator that's the case. And I mean, honestly, that stuff's pretty low regulation as far as animal testing and stuff like that is concerned. So, I mean, would that surprise you?
Lab rats, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Once you get into like monkeys and stuff like that, that would surprise me because that would
something
be
like that.
a lot of approval needed to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, right? Listen, if they're gonna grow an ear on the back of a rat and have it run around and then give it otherwise incurable ailments that start with a C, and then sit there and figure out what like the ear rat, can like cure if that's what they're doing. Like, I mean, I think that they gave it the magnetite shot, bro.
Yeah, we're getting close to that kind of stuff, though. I mean, if they're growing it on rats or if they're growing it on pigs or whatever they're doing, it's only a matter of time before we start becoming guinea pig ourselves. You know what I
Yep,
mean?
true story. If you're
So,
not already, because the sick, sad thing about it all is that this is all non-invasive and passive for the most
yeah,
part, with the exception of the other example with the injection. This everything we're talking about is there's nothing going in or on you. It's just you're just in it. So yeah,
hmm,
that could be a thing.
definitely could be a thing, man.
Hmm.
So, you know, kind of what drew us to this, just so you know, is we always talk about resonance on the show and things like that. And there's certain processes that can go on in your lab, and you have to pay attention to all of them. And there's certain traditions that go on, I mean, whether it be sitting in the mud. There's one like that, you know what I mean? You get a mud bath and it's supposed to be better for you, bring you back down to earth, things like that. And there's natural frequencies of the earth that go on, and it probably has to tie into something like that. There's people, build devices to block out certain frequencies, man, because they think that they're wrong. They build devices to bring in certain frequencies. And so a lot of the stuff has to do with what Eight Center was talking about with his organites and things like that.
Hmm.
How it really ties into what's going on is if you honestly have a frequency that you need to get to and you need your brain to unlock to, that's what that whole thing is about when you get
Okay.
there. You got to, yeah, you got to pull in that frequency in order to tune your brain right. And it takes a lot of meditation, a lot of time, a lot of getting rid of all the frequencies as you meditate and things like that, and then bringing in the right one in order to look for a better outcome.
Well, I mean, that just adds another layer to the to brainwave entrainment, and just the whole mechanisms behind that and hemispherical synchronization. Like you said earlier, whenever you are introducing two frequencies, to come into resonance to produce a beat frequency, your processes there are extremely interesting, and it goes a little further than we've discussed in the past because we've always kept it to that frequency is going into your ear, your brain is translating that in a certain way. That translation is leading to an offset beat frequency of a much lower hertz, and then your brain falls into sync with that offset amount while linking your right and left hemispheres of your brain together, which over time creates new neural pathways, right? That's like very surface level of what's actually going on, although it's 100% true. There's other mechanisms at work. Like, for instance, the fact that your skull is vibrating at those two specific frequencies also and emanating it through your entire nervous system. And, and all your bone structure as well. Also bringing your body into tune with that same frequency input. Additionally, and one thing that's probably critically underlooked when it comes to binaural beats and stuff like that too is your breathing, right? Your breathing actually falls into sync with the resonance and the beat frequency as well. And when you're tuning yourself through those breathing techniques, what you become to realize is that your tuning doesn't have to necessarily make a sound like a hum or something to match what you're hearing in order for the um, synchronization to take place. Simply like gesturing to make that same tone while you're on a breath, on a breathing out, like puckering your lips and humming in that sort of fashion, without even making a sound, is actually enough to sync your pulmonary system as well. Now once you connect the fact that you have your brain, your bones, and your pulmonary system all doing the same thing, the only thing that's left is for your heart to fall into sync with that pattern. And obviously, given that the whole entire system is now working like this, it's only a matter of time before your heart falls in as well. And your heart actually has the biggest electromagnetic signal and output of your entire body. Like the sum of your heart alone is actually greater than the rest of your body's entirety.
So, okay, check this out. So let's correlate that into resonance, shall we?
Mhm.
Tesla's earthquake machine. This is going to be a shock to someone to know how this works, but this is actually how it works. The frequency is really low, okay? But there's two frequencies. As the magnet goes up and down, it induces one frequency and another second frequency, okay? What people don't understand about that is underneath you have water hammer and steam hammer going on. So it's a pulse for both.
Mhm.
Why does this matter? Because every time that it goes off, your body works in the exact same way. You're sending out one wave, then a second wave, right? But in between those waves, you're sending out pulses.
Mhm.
Okay. One pulse, two pulse, one pulse, two pulse, one wave, two wave, right? In nature, what his machine did was it found the resonance frequency of steel itself. In that frequency, what it did is it took time to build out. So you go over an hour, it feels like nothing, 2 hours, 3 hours, get to 10 hours, you finally get some systems around you starting to vibrate. Why? Because it takes a while for that pulse to push it through everything, right? And it
Mhm.
does it like this. It doesn't just do it like this and come back. It does it like this and like this. And it keeps building out. Now, if you let it go long enough, it'll continue to go through everything. Think of the way we do things in meditation working the same way.
Mhm.
Is a structure over time continuing to do that, that's always going like that, means that you can set it to be like that. That's why it's most important to get yourself mind cleared, sit in the right spot, get completely calm, and allow the process to take its time to work its way through.
For sure. And I think what's becoming, not only more and more evident, but like, it's kind of concerning when you think about it too. You see, like, entering into meditative states, like, although not fully in your control all the time, is more often than not something that you choose to do, you prepare to do, you ultimately fall into. But the implications of, having multi-frequency inputs and fields that you're actually directly in contact with, and for these specific purposes, is that you could actually find yourself in that type of same state of mind, but also your body as well in that same exact flow state as the deeper meditative practice, but it's entirely externally induced, you know. So that's a great thing if you're talking about a therapeutic treatment that's actually targeting something. That's great. But if this stuff is just present and then you're walking into it unknowingly, you too then could just fall into that kind of state of mind, but also your body fall into it too. And that could actually, like, anything that's not expected or consensual is probably more traumatic than anything, right? So it's something to be mindful of when you're working with more than one um frequency output. But it's also something to bear in mind that, like, these technologies could be used for alternative purposes. Think about, like, how powerful that kind of is if you're able to just throw a whole bunch of people into some kind of awakened state, so to speak. It's
Mm.
kind of you know
So,
interesting to think.
so let me tie this in a little bit to the earth, to what somebody in the chat was talking about, so we understand this. In the earth itself, you get a scalar. Okay. And what that basically means is, if you're standing on the surface of the earth, it's hot, right? When you go up to the mountains, it's cold. But for every layer in between, you have a different frequency that goes on in every layer. And the temperature changes for every bit of distance. So what scalar is distance, temperature, and frequency all rolled into one. And the way it builds out is if you have a sphere, it builds out in a sphere shape. If you have a single pipe, it builds out from the pipe. So take a sphere, for instance, just like our Earth, and it builds out like that. Now, how does this affect you? If you live in the mountains, then what's going into your body and the scalar structure right there changes how you interact with the Earth. If you're on the surface, it changes. If you're inside the Earth itself a lot, right? In a cave or something like that, it changes the way your body interacts with the Earth. If you're out in space, it changes it as well, because now you're not in Earth frequency, you're in the space itself. So what is scalar? It's temperature, time, frequency, and distance. All of those things rolled into one. All of them are present in it. It takes a radiant field in order to build a scalar field. It has to be built out in pure energy to build out. Now, like I said, this can change plant growth and things like that. So if you're at a higher elevation and the frequency is different and the temperature is different, then plant growth will grow. And you have an extra, what do you want to call it, a molecule or what's the right word, Joe? You have a spike, a protein spike that goes in that plant that normally wouldn't be there.
Well, right.
So,
That's a known phenomena of this, by the way, and it's not only in plants; it's also in cells as well. And that I've been researching lately. Once I stumbled upon that whole, like, you could simulate a hormone situation and how these hormones have receptors, and then I became interested in what the geometry of those receptors look like, because I think that would actually have a lot to do with the effect that the particular hormone has, is the geometry of the receptors and how they connect in a circuit, right? So that got me down the rabbit hole of just kind of like looking into these things a little bit to maybe fill in some of the gaps of what I'm assuming. And that was one thing that I stumbled upon, is that extra low frequency, like ELF, 1 to 100 hertz, actually is known to induce protein spikes in production, in biological cells, largely, like not only in plants. So I thought that was actually fascinating.
Yeah, it changes what you do with the energy you put around it. That's for sure. So let me give you guys a little thing, just sacred geometry. People don't understand it, and the coils and stuff. It's resonating more than one resonance frequency at a time. It literally is stair-stepping resonance and frequency. We look at this as harmonics, okay? It's a scale. It's a frequency scale, but it's still the resonance frequency it's building at that scale. So if you basically took a hexagon, and each side of that hexagon, right, has its own frequency, but then the next layer or 5 layers above it has that same hexagon, right? And on that same side of it, now they are in resonance with each other because they're putting off that exact same frequency. That puts off the harmonic. Now, because it's going up like a spiral staircase, it's building out in harmonics, okay? And it'll start to build out in octaves. It puts the musical scale. This is string theory. This is literally building it out in strings. The hums, the sounds, everything. All of it has to be together when you do this stuff. That's the key to those geometry coils. It's how you induce that resonance, where it's at, where the frequency pings each other, and then how they move in oscillation together. And is there more than one? Hexagon has 5 sides, so there are 5 different resonance frequencies that you're getting in there. So when I say there's a combination lock going on, I'm saying in that hexagon there's 5, but what if I want an octagon, right? Well, you know what I mean? What if I want a tetrahedron? You gotta look at things like that. That's a combination lock that's going on. And because they move 180 degrees out, you have one going this way and one going this way, right? So you have a positive and a negative going on simultaneously in that coil itself. Now you can start to imagine, okay? You have a symphony in there that's going on at all times. It's pulling on every single string in the entire universe, right? It's making every single one of the sounds, the more geometry that you put inside of this thing. Now, what does that actually do? Well, inside the vortex, it's pulling apart molecules and then it's reforming them in the center, which should be the null zone, right? Where things shouldn't work. But that's really like a zone where things come apart and they go back together and then they get shot out the other side. That's what's going on there. You're tearing things apart and putting them back together. Now, just in that big explanation, we can simplify the whole thing and simply just look at the thunderstorm generator. We're looking at two spheres, both of them set to a perfect distance apart, to a perfect size in order to resonate with each other. As they do that, they're breaking apart the molecule chain. As they break the molecule chain, now you're able to put it back together. But you had to ionize the stuff around it in order to be able to pull those things apart because they're stuck together. So
Right. There's got to be total separation of left and right, hot and cold.
there you go.
Clockwise and counterclockwise, and charge separation, and then you have to have a sustained cavitation effect in order for it to be able to break properly and then disperse back to its native form. Kind of what it boils down to, and that is a wonderful example. Now I did something with my Tesla coil today
Oh,
that I found interesting. And I haven't gotten my head fully around it yet because I didn't play with it long enough, and I need to. But I didn't want to fry my Tesla coil, and I was afraid that that might happen. So what I did was I took my dumb 180 degree out of phase coil that I always play with, right? And what I did was I put the wire that hooks up to it right down the rod in the middle. But then what I did was I looped it around and I stuck the rod down the middle of the coil back on it.
okay.
And what I found was interesting. It amplified the amount of energy coming off of it exponentially. Exponentially. Now I was playing with the gas tubes. Now usually the gas tubes light up purple or orange, usually orange. But
Right.
sometimes if you have some distance in between the Tesla coil and the other coil, right? Like it'll light up purple. Well, this thing turned pink hot red and was significantly brighter and had way, way more throw than it typically did. It was discharging plasma at I got it as low as I want to say 3 or 4 volts, and the tip was still glowing. Wow. The tip was still glowing at 3-4 volts. It wasn't moving, just glowing.
Oh, you multiplied the energy hard.
And then when I put it up, this thing was fucking cooking. And then I pushed it. I was like, oh, let's really see. The damn argon bulb got so bright and so pink that I couldn't even look straight at it. And I'm holding it in my hand. I sent you videos. Oh. Yeah.
Give me a second.
I knew you didn't see them because you popped right on and we were right on here. But I was like, yeah, that was interesting because I know what's going on. I knew what I was doing when I did it, or at least thought I did, but I didn't expect that result, to be honest. So what I've done here is I have it running at 11.3 volts through the PNP. And I have the brass tube down the center that has an insulated wire running down the brass tube. That insulated wire hooks up to this coil. Okay, and then it actually cycles back around. So I put the wire and the rod through the center, cycles back around and back into itself. So what I'm noticing here is that it's maintaining an infinitesimally small plasma breakout even at this low voltage, and I could probably drop it even lower and still maintain that.
And I did.
That's an interesting thing. The reach
Oh, look at that.
to excitate the gas in the tube is really, really far for the voltage. Okay, now, aside from that, this tube usually lights up orange and
look at the
sometimes
colors.
purple, but it's lighting up bright pink. And it's lighting up bright pink, much more intense than at higher voltages without this setup on top. So it's lighting up an entirely different color and at a much greater intensity with a greater reach, just by putting that on top. All right, so I wanted to share this because this was kind of interesting.
All right, there's another one though. See if I sent you the one where I cranked it up. You gotta see the plasma on this.
Okay, this one?
Oh no, I don't know if it's that one. I'd try it. They're pretty short, all of them. Okay, yeah, this one.
Well, he's got it cranked up all right.
Oh, it's not though. It's like 20.
That's crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, baby. Look at that.
That's what I'm saying. Yo, that thing was blinding. I couldn't even look at it.
Wow.
And it wasn't hot or anything though.
It's so hard to tell you how bright that is.
It was like a laser, dude.
All right.
You know what's scary about
Let's
that,
see
Joe?
if that's better.
You're only at 20 volts. You got 20 more you could go. You know what I mean?
I know, but I didn't want to break the coil, bro. I was afraid. Like I let it run for like a while too, and I started smelling like some melting shit, so I turned it off.
It's probably you got that rod steaming hot. And
It's definitely the rod.
coil.
It's 100% the rod, bro. 100%.
Yeah, it looks like you lined it up straight, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying. It was so bright. Without that, man, I've run it at almost 40 watts and tried the same thing. It's not even close, and it's not even close. So, should I say why it's doing that, or at least what I think?
Oh yeah, let me pause it real quick. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So you take the inner field, you bring it out, and then you create a second field on top. That then creating fucking an inverse torsion that's riding off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's just working like an 8 sign, like an infinity. So it's like bringing another source to spin it further. And what you notice is that if you look at it when I had it at low, and I sent a few videos, and we don't have to watch them because we've all seen it. You see when the PNP is trying to self-correct, right? You could tell how stable the resonance is based on the breakout. Okay, because the breakout will be stable or unstable
depending on, if what its resonance has to, is consistent or not, how much it's correcting.
Mhm.
Okay. When I had it like this, that thing didn't budge. It was an oval the entire time. Like the resonance in it was just free flowing because you have a second torus that's working totally inverse of it, actually working at higher dimensional energy that's actually pulling the other one along. So it's like as this one pulls up, it's pulling that one down, but that one's pulling down. So then it's then pulling that one up, and it's just creating like almost like the equivalent mechanically of what like a gyroscopic effect would be in stability. So
Okay.
once you have that, you're upping your efficiency. Once you up your efficiency, now all of a sudden you are able to amplify the effect, and that's why that damn bulb is glowing so bright.
Okay. So let me tell you a little secret.
Please.
If you took a round sphere and put it with the rod down the center on the very top, right? That's what breaks out in scalar. You're taking both fields, right? You got the inside field that's cold, the outside field that's hot. You have the round ball at 360 degrees, and now you're building it out. Temperature, you know what I mean? Temperature, distance, and frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you're doing. That's why they're built
Exactly
that
it.
way. So if you had a second one that was a receiving one that just sat off of there, and then you connected the ground together, guess what? You're going to get a massive amount of energy in that second one.
Massive. And you got to remember that because that top coil is 180 degrees out of phase and then looped within itself, over and over infinitely because it's looped and it's cross looped and cross looped, right? Because that's the case, it is infinitely also throwing off scalar too. But you see that scalar throws off, but a bit of it collapses.
Mhm.
So what you end up having is you have that 8 that I was saying before, the infinity sign, where it's totally opposite of the field below it that's running the same gears. But then you also have this element of it where it's actually throwing scalar right off at that apex line, that would ultimately be able to transmit that energy and resonance, much further if you could just have another setup that's going to collapse that field. So it's just a whole other
Well, think about what you just said
component
there.
of it.
Everybody who talks about the earth talks about that infinity sign inside the earth, right? That 8 that's always there. It's always propagating, but what you're doing is you're showing how to build the 8, how to collapse it and build it right back out into scalar. Dude, that's a whole different lesson in itself right there. This is
Oh, I know.
the direct physics to what you're doing on a planet. That's why it's scalar that's going on the planet. There's no question about it.
Oh yeah. And it wasn't bad energy being thrown off of it either, because like, usually with that level of breakout, it'd be stinking like friggin' ozone left and right. You'd be able to feel the energy field absolutely positively. Like this it was actually pretty mellow for what the result was. And like I said, it was continuing to amplify as I let it run, which is why I was able to run it as long as I did. And it was kind of good, and it was still maintaining that same level, and if anything it was getting stronger. But then over time I definitely felt like I was probably melting a little ABS on the inside,
Well,
once it started getting to a certain point.
think about it this way. The outside of the Tesla coil has a dirty RF to it. The inside has no RF. So when you flip that back there, you were removing the dirty RF from the outside of it and giving it a pure signal of just the scalar. That's what was going on. You were
Yeah.
removing. So as you remove the RF hot that you get in the room, where everything, all the metal becomes hot when it's absolutely cold, you got rid of it. And you got the pure scalar out of it.
Now the color change is interesting
Oh yeah.
because
It's
that's indicative of a change in resonance, which the PNP isn't going to do. So if you have a change in the resonance, the only way that could be done is by a phase change, right?
as
So
far as you go out, it'll change. The closer
so
you get,
so
it'll
you end up with
change.
a phase change that changes the frequency,
And then that's the mechanism of it changing color, because it never lit up pink before. Purple, yeah. Orange, yeah. Pink, hot red, never, 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 never.
It's so funny because you just proved out Scalar like 100%. Like
Mhm.
you're getting a temperature differential the more, you know what I mean, as you change the distance, right?
Mhm.
But it means the frequency itself has changed in each distance zone that it's in. So it's like a perfect example of what you should be looking for in that. That's why when you start playing with that inner field and it starts flipping things around, I always talk about a flip in there. Now you're starting to see it in right in front of you. You know what I mean? It's like, hello, we're here. Well, Nathan told you something was different about this.
Well, I listened to you when you were talking about the mass, right? So Nathan and
Oh
I had a
yeah,
conversation about, running the center energy out, and it has nothing to do with the distance. It has everything to do with the mass. So if you're going to be transmitting the current, I guess we'll call it, even though it's sort of not,
not
but
current.
yeah, it's not current. I don't want to call it that. Whatever. The frequency, we'll just call it that. You're
Mhm.
transmitting the inner frequency, through the wire. Um, it has nothing to do with the distance that it runs, but rather the mass, and it's the inverse of what you've learned about electricity, where the less resistance you have, the greater the distance it could ultimately like run unimpeded, right? Like it's inverse of that. This is mass based. So by running a thinner wire, you can actually run it longer. Or if you reduce the length of the wire, you reduce the mass. Now you have more of the potential running down it. So I shortened the wire significantly, brought it closer to the field, and then halo wrapped the excess wire up over and around it, knowing that that would lead to the scalar collapse, because that wasn't run out of phase. See, like, I mean, it might look like it was made out of shit I pulled out of a dumpster, probably because it was, but I mean, it wasn't done thoughtlessly.
It's the important part.
Yeah.
That math thing is a real hard thing to get around. People don't understand. Slayer cider is not it is not connected to ground in any way. Therefore, it's a floating ground. And when you have a floating ground, the mass matters a whole lot more than it does when you have a grounded coil, because the grounded coil is grounded to your mass. Now you remove that. Now you're in your own mass zone. Now that
Yep.
scalar field changes in how you build it out. So if you had a ZVS, it wouldn't build out the same way at all.
Another proof of the scalar element of it is the fact, like you said, the way that it works in the self-correcting fashion is that if you get close to it, it disrupts the resonance of it and correct and auto corrects. So you always have a change in your breakout. Go back, you'll see there is no change in the breakout as I'm approaching it, as I'm sticking my hand right next to it, as I'm right there, right where usually it would be fluctuating, right?
Yeah.
Yet that thing was rock solid. Why was it rock solid? Because of the scalar component that was introduced and collapsing. So it's the collapse that's ultimately giving you the energy, but it's the scalar component that's keeping it stable.
Mhm.
So I don't know, man. It's cool stuff. Like I kind of wanted to like get right. I wanted to like stand on the top of the Tesla coil right in between point A and point B, but like I'm not that small and I don't know how to shrink myself. So
So let's take a look at it one more time. I'll run it.
yeah, I sent you a
Oh,
few videos. You could check them out. I mean,
all right. Let's
All
run this
right.
one real quick.
Let's
No.
see if that's better. That's crazy.
Oh, hold on. Let's go
It's so
back a
hard to
little
tell.
bit. Let me just show people something. Let me find the distance you had it furthest at in the video.
It was about 2.5, 3 feet.
Okay. So let's look at that. Just so we all understand this, those bulbs do not light up that far away normally at all. You have to touch them near the coil, like within an inch or two of the coil to get something to light up that's that type of gas. So that's phenomenal just in itself.
Mm-hmm. The brightness is just absurd. It's so ridiculous.
It's so hard to tell you how bright that is.
What gas is it? Did they tell you, Joe?
It's argon.
Nice. All right, let's go back one video. So this has less power in it. We can see that. You're probably at what, 12, 13, 14 volts, somewhere in there?
It was low. 11, I think. Something
11.
like that. Which it doesn't usually break out at 11. That's not move, at least.
I think that's what all it's got there, Joe.
Oh, okay. Well, I have more. We could visit them another time, but it's definitely something I'm going to play a bit more with. Oh yeah, there was more interesting stuff, and I didn't send you these videos, but one thing is there's definitely a charge separation that's going on, or something like that. There's some kind of separation that's going on. So I was throwing some vapor on it just to see what it was gonna do, and what I noticed was the vapor would accumulate at one particular place in between the top of the Tesla coil and then that second coil that I have, and it would accumulate right on the top of the Tesla coil, and then it would like very, very slowly waft off, and it would waft off in the same exact way and in very thin strands, right? And it's no matter where or how I put the vapor on. So I tried everything. I tried like blowing it directly on that spot, from the opposite way, from the top, from the bottom. I let it ride up the side of the Tesla coil first, that sort of thing. The only thing that impacted it at all, like, was the ionic wind from the breakout a little bit. But once you got past that ionic wind, everything that was going on in between the Tesla coil and that second coil was predictably and reliably the same dispersion, regardless of the environment.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it had that one spot where it would continuously, no matter where, it would all accumulate there and stay there. And it would stay there for like a really, really absurdly long time. Then you look at if you were to blow it into like regular air or anywhere else, it has like this specific rate of dispersion that occurs without wind or anything like that, right? It just kind of like disperses and moves at a certain speed. Yet that speed was significantly altered on that one side of the coil. So when we were looking at it from that one angle, it was the left side. Like when you're looking at it straight on, it's that left side was just hanging on and making all the vapor linger.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't really know too much right now about what that's saying just yet. I kind of need to play with it some more to kind of get my head around it. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I was just going to mention, by the way, there's two types of scalar that you would run into. And, okay, vector, direction, temperature, all that is a mathematical calculation, by the way. The second type is when you get into Bearden's type of, scalar. So you have two scalar components, right? One and the other. And in between, you have what seems like a null zone. I'm telling you, there's not nothing there. It's like it goes to the Planck scale in between the two, and sits in there, and we don't see it. Okay, we can't interact with it. That's why when you get into space and you have a planet and you have a sun, you have a scalar field between them, and then there's a big null zone, right? But it doesn't mean that there's zero energy there. It just means it's on a scale that you can't reach. So
Mhm.
if I were to sit there and find the correct frequency that it put out between the both of them, and I put up my little antenna at that same frequency, I get the power. If I put it close to the frequency, I get the power. Well, put it directly, it might kill you. But just put it close to it, right? You know, you get what I'm trying to say, though.
Absolutely. And actually, that was the one thought that I kind of did have, but I just wasn't like, certain enough to say it, was that, that one particular spot could be acting as a null zone between the two fields that are ongoing in that figure 8. So that's just where it's coalescing in equilibrium, and then
Uh,
that's why it's stuck in that one spot.
I don't think
And
that's the null zone we're talking about, though.
no, huh?
No, okay, the null zone. So, like, if you ever do them at distance, and this is something that I've done a lot, okay, when I tell you I get 11 feet out of it, if I can get 20 feet out of it, you get a null zone. You get an area where it's on here, right? You walk in the middle of it, you don't feel the coil at all, none whatsoever. You get 6 feet from the coil, you start to feel it. It comes in your body. You can start to get, you know what I mean, tinglies from it. You understand the feeling, and the whole thing builds out there. Well, in the middle between there, in the 10 feet distance in between, you got nothing. You got absolutely nothing. But as
Mm,
soon as I put a coil in there with the right frequency in that coil, it turns on immediately. So it's still, the energy is present in between the two of them. It's just not in an area where you can feel it. You're not going to put your meter over there and pick up anything. It'll show zero. Okay. That's the whole point. It shows zero, but there's absolutely pure energy right there. And all
yeah.
you have to do is find it. So that happens in the room. Remember, we were talking about you stand in one spot of a cathedral and
Mhm.
then you start humming in that one spot. If you're in the correct spot, then it pulls off everywhere, right? Well, you're tapping into that underlying energy that's in that room because of where you're at in that field. It happens all over the place, and we don't really recognize it. But in the scalar, it's very specific. It's right in between them, man. It's boom, put it up, and you got it.
Mm.
So if I wanted to run a motor in between it, right? And I just said, okay, that's enough power that I can get it out of it. I'll just pop a coil right in between it, turn it on. Turn on light bulbs, turn on whatever I want. So it'll literally look like Christmas time in my room when I start playing with it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the difference. That's
Well, so this null zone thing though, like I'm kind of like seeing it from like an esoteric sense where like that becomes like the abyss. Like there's something on the other side of it that's very real and tangible. But like there's this point where like you reach where there's nothing seemingly there. Although it's all there, but you just it's just not detectable really. Like you need to
can't
be able
interact
to
with it.
right, you need to be able to cut through and go through it in order to get to the other side of it, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have its use too, right? And that's it's sort of like the intermediary zone. So if you're it would be very helpful to be able to see these fields, and we always say that, but it would be very helpful to be able to see these fields, because there is a potential there for there to be at what we would generally think of as maybe like the end of like the diffuse like field zone, like where it would start to cut off, right? So if it's a sphere, right, it would just cut off at the end of the sphere. But then if it's mirrored on the other side, and it's mirrored on the other side where you have it coming like this, you're gonna have this spot in the middle that's fucking nothing. You know what I mean? But it's just like the inverse of the diffuse, where you could get it right on the other side too. It's just the mirrored image of it. It's just kind of superimposed on the other side.
So think about it this way: if we were going from say the sun to Mars, say we're by the sun and we want to get to Mars and we want to get there quickly, right? If we knew that frequency that the sun was putting out to Mars, right? And we knew how to get into the Planck scale of it, then we can tap that energy and ride that direct path on that energy right to it, right?
Right
It,
to it. Yeah, man.
I mean, it's just like
Uh-huh.
boom, it's like catching a wave out here in California, man. You're just gonna catch it and ride that sucker in. Okay, that's what you're doing. That's what you're looking for throughout all these things. So if you say, okay, now I got the center of the galaxy, and I know that, and I know what the sun is to it, right? And I know there's energy in between them. Now, can I hit that zone right there and ride straight to it? You get what I'm saying? It's
I
not like
do.
a jump drive, but it's kind of like that. You're getting into the plane scale in order to get the energy to fly you right through. Does it make some kind of Einstein-Rosen bridge? Who knows? You know what I mean? Is that the tunneling you're looking at? We don't know because we haven't built it yet. But
Right.
I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for, is that type of energy, that because it's so much more energy than what you're used to. And it's traveling in a non-destructive path.
So it's my theory, and this is why I think of course, I wanted to show what I was kind of playing with and whatnot. I've had the Tesla coil for a few weeks now. I've talked about it a little bit, but I really haven't shown all too much of some of the stuff I've been playing with, right? But aside from wanting to show it, I do feel okay that this is directly usable and related to what we're talking about today with the biology end of things.
Oh yeah,
Because
go back to that.
because the question then becomes, right, the same as you tap the center, right, and now you have this amplified field, and you know it's in a figure 8 the way that it's working. If you're able to tap off of that interaction point, like that plane where those two fields are meeting, probably the same spot where the vapor is sitting, right, and you tap off of that, I think that becomes your usable energy for biologic purpose, because it's got both sides of the energy, and it's in a state of equilibrium. It's in a state of equilibrium in resonance, in a particular specific resonance. So I think that, just like anything, when you're dealing with a hot side or a cold side, there's too hot and there's too cold. But if you take that out of the equation entirely, and you're just being able to tap into the middle ground of it both, where both these fields interact at that plane, the cause of that amplification can be extracted and then used. And that's my next thing that I'm going to do.
Very cool. Yeah, some of this stuff, man. I'd love to just tell you the honest truth about some of the stuff that we work with. They won't let us. But yeah, there's a key to all this stuff, and I've actually shown a lot of videos on some of this stuff, on the way it's done. If you can read through the gobbledygook and get to the real answer there. So, I mean, we'll just say this, okay? There's a reason that mud is conductive at 3 feet when you use this type of energy, right? We're using the negative part of energy. We're putting the thing directly into mud, right? The mud's at a distance. We're hitting the mineral level. We're interacting with the minerals in it in order to get the distance, right? The water's in the middle, all that, okay? But when you touch it with the light, it lights up brighter. So you think, okay, so it's amplification that's going on. When you you leave the light right there, right? You put your hand onto it. What happens? The light goes out. The energy was still in the mud. Okay, let me just tell you that right now. Any kind of energy and all that, the only thing that left that whole system was the frequency. I took the frequency from it. I stole it. Okay? When I stole the frequency, it put out the light. That's what happened. The energy is still there. That's the insane thing. So if you can understand that in a different way, then you'll start to understand what we're getting at here. So if you go, okay, man, we got the pyramids and they're working on negative energy, and we got that going on, and we got mud everywhere, and then, oh my God, you know what I mean? Something else is happening. Yeah, there's a different process altogether. It's backwards of the way you think energy works.
Right, but I mean, you were saying, even with that example and with the mud example that you've shown a bunch of times, right? I mean, that goes back to what we were saying before about mass, right? And why ground is ground. Ground is ground because of the large mass. So in the context of the mud example, because it's a control and it's a small plate of mud that weighs, call it, 15 pounds wet, right? Well, you touching it, you're a greater mass than it. So you now became virtual ground. You're taking the frequency. And then therefore there's no complete circuit anymore with the with the mud in the bulb. But if you touch the bulb to your hand, it lights up.
Yeah.
Which is the same. It's inherently the same thing with the body capacitance, and why a lot of times like the bulb won't light if you're not touching it, like in with the Tesla coil. Like sometimes you need that contact in order for it to actually light up, if your energy levels aren't high enough.
Yeah, we're the mass. I told you everything comes down to mass, Joe.
Yeah, it does.
So
That's the main differential that's at play with anything that's manifesting as electromagnetism is mass, which is by the way, for anybody wondering, there's your direct correlation with gravity. If you can't connect the dots now, you never will.
okay, so I gotta say this. Okay, this is what drives me nuts. They call it the electric universe, right? And then you have standard physics. If they don't see the correlation, man, there's something wrong up here. Okay, because in order to build out the mass as what we know it, so rocks and stuff like that, okay, you have to have energy. The energy is containing the mass. And if you don't believe me, just go out, sit in a spaceship, and look at the Earth. The energy around the Earth is containing the mass. So, I mean, it's a pretty clear example, and you can't argue it because you see it happening right in front of your face. Okay. But now understand it the different way. In order to build out that mass to a bigger size, you must have the energy built out to a bigger size in order to incorporate the mass. Now, let's strip you out even further. Out of energy, you can make mass. That's the whole key here. You can take lasers, okay, or light and put it down in some of these coils and create mass out of it. I don't think people understand that that's physically possible, but it's been done already. We've already done it. So
Right.
if you don't see that part of the electrical universe, and by the way, they should turn it to the energy universe, not
Right. I was going to say
electrical
the
universe.
potential universe or something.
Yeah, no, it's energy because it's all energy, and it's just in different forms. Even physics says it's in different forms, and then they discount electrical theory, which is just kind of stupid. Anyway, it kind of gives you a different understanding of mass and density when you look at it. It's not just how much density is in a rock. Sometimes it's the electrical value in there that gives you the energy. Because I could tell you this right now, your gravity is energy based. It's not mass based. It's energy based. It has to do with the energy fields around the mass, and it means that there is a mass effect to it, but it's ultimately energy based. So,
Right.
sorry if it doesn't jive with your physics, but it's absolutely 100% correct.
Well, it's also worth noting too that, since mass and ground are directly related, right? When you're talking about something like anti-gravity, right? The critical importance of being able to jump from an earth ground to a looped ground, because, grounding to yourself is the only way to be able to get energy density high enough to be able to break a locality. Right. So if you're grounding to the earth, or, like that's not going to work. You need to build up enough of a closed system to be able to, at that point, it becomes like, it's sort of like what I would assume how the device in the front of the B-2 stealth bomber works, where you have a mass reduction. It's a loop within the whole entire aircraft.
Mhm.
As it's traveling forward, it's creating more and more energy and looping it around itself, and therefore having inertial mass reduction. It's a similar circumstance, but that's like the critical component there too, because if it's going to be grounded to the ground, then you're always going to be stuck on Earth, because everything that it can't cycle around, it's just
you know, everything that you need is just going to go, you know, back into the larger mass all the time.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's mass reduction. That's the thing. I think it's impedance reduction.
I mean, that well could be too. I mean, I would say that they're directly related.
Yeah, I think when they get down to it, they're going to cancel inertia this way because they're going to get rid of the impedance. So as you build up, you're building into a Mach wall, right? So it builds pressure in front of the plane.
Mhm.
Well, when you take this stuff and you put an energy level to it, you're reducing the pressure against the plane. That's what I'm saying. It's going to get rid of that more and more and more until they can cancel inertia completely.
Right, right. It's like running on a treadmill. It's what it is. You know, if you stop running, right, it pushes you off. But if you could actually run at a positive pressure at the front of your aircraft, it's pushing that other pressure back, and then the resistance that, you know, the craft is experiencing is significantly less. Yeah, but it's interesting to think because, you know, we tend to think about you know, air pressure differentials and stuff like that as being the mechanism of lift, right? So if you do away with all that inertial force entirely, then what's to act upon your wings to keep you aloft? All right. It kind of begs the question, you know.
Well, I don't think you need it. Once you get past the point of inertia, you don't need.
Yeah, right. Because at that point, I guess it's like skipping a rock, right?
Yeah,
You have a high pressure underneath you that would be able to keep you, you know, bouncing in resonance on top of whatever plane you're on. Yeah, I guess so. Making a rail for yourself.
Someone was asking how you do it. You have to have a geometry coil. I mentioned earlier how they work and how they get into all the frequency harmonics. You have to have one of those. That's why you build them. So, you know, some of the systems, by the way, how do I say this? I say it without saying it. When you use energy to create mass, you have to reset the coil in the harmonic that it's in, okay, and put an overtone to it because you've now created more mass inside of it, right? Unless you remove the mass immediately, okay? If it falls right there on the little countertop next to your coil, you've added mass to the system. It is now trying to resonate that mass with the system, okay? Just like a PMP circuit. You must remove that mass. So having it in a system where it drops into a bucket is much more efficient because then the mass is removed. It doesn't mess up the coil, doesn't change the frequency. Sometimes you have to calculate the frequency in the room itself and the energy in the room. There's a whole thing to this. There's a time dilation feature that goes into it. It's a lot more built out than simply telling you, hey, you could take this little coil and make it happen, because that would be a lie if I told you that. But if I told you how to do time dilation and in order to make the energy itself transform into that, then it would get a little more complicated, but we can get there. So,
yeah, sure. But
time dilation, by the way, is all energy based, and they put it in physics, and I'm laughing my butt off because if you discount electrical theory and you go into physics and try to create a time dilation field, dude, you might as well be sitting on your fist and leaning back on your thumb, buddy, because you ain't getting nowhere.
Yeah, you need a lot based on that mathematics. You know, like the offsets have to be so wildly out of proportion to change it. But yet, at the same exact time, they'll, in the same breath of air, give you the math of the time difference, objective time difference based on altitude alone, right? Yeah. So, you know, have your cake and eat it too, I guess. When you work with numbers and you can screw with them enough, you can make whatever you want work.
Well, it's like they keep trying to tell you space-time, right? Space-time doesn't exist without time dilation. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Space-time is a vector. And then when you get to it, time dilation causes it all, because in the center of our universe is time dilation. And every single time that you build a star, there's time dilation. Every time you build a solar system, there's time dilation, right? Well, now you have vectors in order for things to work, for space-time to work. It's hilarious that they put it backwards, because they don't understand energy and how energy works. They think that somehow energy is not part of the equation, but in every single thing that they do, they build it out of energy. Have you noticed that?
Well, I mean, everything builds out with time dilation too. It builds out in layers, just generally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there are also multiple layers that also interact at different planes too, that are occurring based on bodies that exist within space, right? But if you kind of looked at it, like if Earth has its specific time dilation field, then our solar system has its own too, and then we're part of a galaxy which has kind of like its own. It's probably zoned out depending on where in the spiral you are, as to what the level of compression is. So then that does, well, what am I describing right now? It's fractal, so but you're also subject to it all, and it all has to do with vectors of motion, because the more vectors of motion you're subject to, the more um influences of time dilation from what I'll call the causal realm you're subject to. But if you do, there such a thing as removing yourself entirely from it? Well, there's a couple ways, right? I mean, you could physically remove yourself entirely from it, which is probably very impractical, because escaping something that's built out like this is not exactly, that easy. The other thing is just to be able to cross, you know, out of this plane, and into the, more causal realms, which again we've discussed as far as, with the Planck scale, and the relevance of, actually amplification at certain particular apexes of the nodes and antinodes of a waveform. But like, does that check you out of the entire equation, or does that just check you out of your local equation? Probably just your local equation.
Oh, you're local, yeah.
Probably
That's
just
like,
your local equation. You just get dumped into a sea of something else that's still subject to probably some form of time dilation in an unrecognizable form, because that's just how it is.
so hold on. That changes the speed of light. You know that, right?
Oh, of
So
course.
the speed of light is relative to your time dilation field that you're
Absolutely.
in. So if you're on the Earth, the speed of light's one thing. You get into space, speed of light would actually have to change.
Well, just by having it phrased as the speed of light, by virtue of speed being a measure of time, and time being subjective to your time dilation field, obviously there's a bit of a subjective perspective based relative variance that occurs there.
Well, yeah,
It's got to be.
but I mean, it changes completely when you get into scalar, because then what is light in a dark area? You know what I mean? Dark solar system. What's light?
I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
I tend to think of
It was
pure
traveling right
scalar
through it.
as I tend to think of pure scalar as an etheric shove. If you're just shoving ether, it it's that same example that I've given 100 times, and I like the example, which is if you have a pickup truck with a chain attached to it, and a mile away you have somebody holding on to the end of the chain. If the pickup truck drives 2 inches, you're pulled 2 inches forward. Like, when are you pulled 2 inches forward? As soon as the truck starts to move.
Yeah.
That's when you're pulled 2 inches forward. The fact that that there's a mile distance in between doesn't matter.
Well,
It's
that's exactly how resonance builds out between two coils, Joe. You're
Mhm.
doing the exact same thing. As soon as one's on, the other one's on.
right, because
It's immediate.
it's creating a perturbations of potential is what it's doing, and it's that perturbation of potential that's ultimately picked up as, in that case, a vibratory energy that's able to be induced, sympathetically at that point into something else, and then immediately shoved. So it's like anything else, right? If you shove something that's full, everything else in front of it must go. But
Oh,
realize what the implications of that all is. That means like butterfly effect is real deal stuff. When
Mm.
if you could sit there and project scalar perturbations, etheric shoves that are fucking unstoppable, then that means that influence, that vibration that you put into your environment is actually omnipresent and
Okay,
effective.
hold on. When we talk about the light speed, okay, and we talk about scalar inside of it, right? If I said it was two coils and I said it was instants, but then I can make the light up next to the coil with nothing attached to it, just simply wound in a frequency, right? Think about that. If that's the way the Earth picks up the energy from the sun, it's the same exact process going on right there. There is no light in between it. There's just distance in the scalar, okay? Which means the energy itself travels in the Planck scale to get to the other side. So it's instantaneous. It proves out the theory of how each planet and the sun work together, okay? Just by doing two coils like that. Because one's in resonance, the other one is just a single frequency that matches it. So it becomes in resonance with it. And then if you know something about planets and the sun, you know that for every planet that rotates the sun, there's a little spot on the sun where every planet travels, okay? Every single one, and that is the resonance zone of that planet. That's
Right. That's the acting load on that zone
yeah.
is what it boils down to. You have the resonant change. You know, no different than the coil that I was showing you before. You know, except for in that extreme example where everything was lighting up like a Christmas tree because of how I set it up. You know, or at lower levels or whatever, where it's less stable. You know, if you apply a load to it, it takes away. You know, like it adjusts and everything, but it's still pulling from it, so it takes away. So then it becomes like a discernible difference. Like you could see the difference between, you know, that load being applied and not. You know, and the surface of the sun is just a massive example of that in that case. You know, but you have everything else, you have everything else that'll keep it stable. And that's why it probably doesn't change all that much, you know, as far as like quick changes, right? So if it's moving, it doesn't change all that much.
Well, I mean, it also kind of gives you some interesting things. Electrical theory, if you change it to energy theory, now makes perfect sense on how that worked. You know what I mean? You immediately solved it by understanding energy the correct way. That's pretty simple, man. But I honestly think it goes in the Planck scale. And here's what I say. Because when you compress something to a Planck scale, right, it comes out as a radiation outside of it. It's a side effect. It happens, okay? That's why when you go ahead and you take this cold energy that we're talking about with the rod down the center Tesla coil, and I connect it to a bulb that's made to put out radiation, right? Which just means it's a compressed energy inside of it. It's taking the energy and not letting it out, okay? And it's compressing it until it becomes a radiation field. And then we're just directing the radiation, right? Well, that's the whole point of this, isn't it? We see it in our Van Allen belt. It's right there in front of us. We can't unsee it, right? And they keep talking about how they can't get through it. Well, it's a byproduct of how the earth works in compression. So they hit the Planck scale. I'm sorry, it's right there. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, if the sun's in a state of fusion, and it's also in a state of cavitation to maintain that fusion event, and you have the hot and all the energy coming off of the surface as hot energy, more or less. I mean, doesn't that suggest that the center of the sun is cold? You know, it kind of would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you would think
there's a lot of compression going on there and probably very, very little reaction.
Yeah.
It's not like a core, right? It's
the reaction's on the outside.
Right.
It's opposite of what you're thinking.
Exactly it.
Yeah. And not only that, let me just fill you people in so everybody understands this. You cannot make a hydrogen gas station that's on the sun. Okay. They keep saying it's in reserve. It's in reserve. They have enough reserve in the sun of hydrogen, right? Let me tell you, whoever spoke that out of their mouth is a total fucking liar. Okay. Right now, I'm just going to tell you flat out, you do not get a reserve. Either you continuously are building hydrogen, and hydrogen then interacts with different things based on pressure. Okay. But you cannot have a gas station on the sun. All right. If anybody who had hydrogen and lit a match to it can attest to this, and if they lived through the experience, that it explodes immediately. It is completely volatile. Okay. You're not going to get, oh, well, we got a bunch of reserve. We got a gas station over here. We're going to pump some more into it, right? It doesn't work that way. Okay. I'm sorry. Whoever came up with that idea, dude, You're nuts in the head. Okay. It's not right. It's a lie. It's a complete and utter lie. And they've
Yeah,
been
I mean,
propagating
well,
that lie forever.
if you're going to use hydrogen in like in an internal combustion sense for our you know smart monkey like mechanical uses, uh the smartest way to probably go about it would just be to utilize water and have have the electrolysis of breaking the molecule occur during a compression stroke. So, it breaks the molecule into its constituents of hydrogen and oxygen. And then through that compression goes pow, but then reconsolidates into a small amount of water and then just repeat, just keep on
Pure
going.
oxygen. Pure oxygen is volatile inside of a hydrogen explosion.
Oh, well, but right. And that is the entire point. If you use a compression stroke to break the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, your compression stroke at the very top of the stroke, would ultimately, ignite it and
Hold on.
through that compression, and then you'd have your combustion, and then that's it. You just do it in the cylinder.
Honestly, Joe, I think they just ionized the water. They
Well, right.
heavily ionized the water in order for it to split at the point of combustion in like a diesel engine form, because a diesel engine creates so much compression that it takes things that shouldn't combust and makes them combust.
But right. So that's exactly what I'm saying, is that, both the splitting of the water into hydrogen and oxygen, which will be used for the combustion event, is made as it's compressing. And then as it compresses to that full compression at the top of the stroke, it then combusts. And there's your reaction, just like a diesel engine.
Yeah, it's all about the level of ionization that you put into it before you have your compression. Yeah.
Interesting. That's like a structured water situation, isn't it?
No, dude.
I mean, it sort of is.
If you really realize, dude, I'm telling you, all these simple devices that they made that are considered fringe, right? They all work on the same principle, Joe.
Mm.
Every last one of them. As soon as you ionize something, you get a reaction. As soon as you get that reaction, you have to use some kind of electrical event, whether it causes it or you cause it, in order to make it work, right? It's the same thing everywhere, man. You could just put a list of them, and I could tell you, check them off, buddy, because this is how it works. It keeps going down the line. It's all about how you're splitting those molecules. That's
Right.
really how it works.
Well, I mean, that goes right back into a conversation that I had not all too long ago, where if you actually use ultrasound to break a water molecule up into a vapor, you could then easily ionize the vapor in that situation. And then there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a dense ionized vapor that is ready to rock and roll. And you'd be making plasmoids like nobody's business under those conditions, by the way, if anybody was wondering. So you'd probably you'd be having some ball lightning events going on the outside of your block, but whatever.
That whole lightning thing, man, is just it literally is as simple as you can think it is. People can't get past it in their head. You basically just have to make a field around voltage. That's it. You're making like a static electricity, and you're putting a field around it. And as soon as you do, it's in cavitation. It can't go anywhere. It's not allowing it to go anywhere. So it presents itself as an Evo until the world can take it back in. That's the way it works. So when you're shooting stuff up into the atmosphere, like microwaves, guess what happens? You have a reaction to that. When you have a reaction to that, what does it do? It encapsulates your energy that's up there, which is what? Static electricity. So now it holds it in a ball, right? And it makes what looks like plasma on the outside. You can literally make a plasmoid as long as you understand that simple theory. And it's done all the time, man. It's not that hard to figure out. The hardest part to get somebody to figure out is, hey, I don't need your $1 million or $1 billion ton of magnetism to hold this piece of junk in, okay? You take that whole thing and cram it right up to the wazoo because I don't need it. Okay, you can literally create the field around this stuff. Okay, people, they can't see it. They say cashmere effect. You need plates. I don't need plates. I simply need the right energy to hold it in. That's it. This isn't like some fringe theory, man. This is
Hold on.
proven.
So check this out. Let's talk about material science for a second, and holding the field in, because it's nothing crazy new, but I made a connection today that I made a while ago, never thought about, and then I realized why that is. Okay, and it's an interesting one. So, you talk about bismuth and its important properties all the time and why it's absolutely critical. But rather than just talk about it as an element for its, dielectric properties and stuff like that, right? Think about it as just a visual, right? You have this particular crystal structure, but when it has an oxide reaction, right, it's iridescent. And that iridescence is actually, it's formed as the oxide, but that's because it's a prerequisite of the crystal structure is to actually manifest that colorful reaction. Okay, what is actually going on that's visually visible in that oxide layer is actually throughout the entire crystalline structure of that bismuth naturally. Okay, and then I was thinking about the elytra of like a scarab beetle, how it's metallic as well. It's metallic and iridescent. And then what I realized is, that the refraction that's occurring, it's not a color, like, those aren't pigments that make it that way, right? It's refraction of light that is making those particular color variant effects. What that ultimately means is that refraction is leading to different wavelength being allowed to pass through at certain angles and being reflected at certain angles in both cases, which means that it's actually acting as frequency filter. Now, if you're able to set your fields to these specific frequencies, right, where some that are supposed to are able to permeate beyond, and then others are held in, then you could both have your diffuse and your compression effects. And it's right as a direct result of the same thing that makes it iridescent.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting as far as like what's going on. In the case of the beetle elytra, the way that it acts is it's all similar, but it's not exactly the same because that works off of a cavernous material, structure effect, right? So in that case, it's actually taking certain frequencies and wavelengths, allowing only some, the helpful ones, to permeate, which is what gives it its color, right? But the ones that pass through are the ones that are actually held in. And what are they held into? They're held into all these the porous structure of the wing that then is allowed to resonate in those little cavities, amplifying those particular wavelengths, right? And it's the same thing with the bismuth.
When it's built out in the crystal form, yes.
When it's built out in the crystal form, because that's why when we had talked a long time ago, it's like, well, if I just put some bismuth here and just like, it's like, no, you got to make sure that the crystal structure is present. And it only crystallizes under certain circumstances.
Yeah, but we're using it in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I think you understand. When we use it between two plates of aluminum, it's not in lead or crystal form. It's in liquid form. You see, I think that's where a misnomer happens. It'll go into a solid lead form, right? Then we'll heat it up because as soon as you start messing with two plates of aluminum resonance, then guess what happens? It creates a plasma. When it creates a plasma, it heats it up, and then you get into a liquid form. Now,
okay,
more like
you know what? I didn't see it that way. Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, this melting point is wildly low.
Yeah, so we're using it completely differently in this form. So then the energy spikes right away.
Well, right.
It's like a
So,
liquid
but
mercury.
that said, though, check this out, though, because it goes right with what you're saying. In its liquid form, it still has full crystal potential because
Yeah.
it naturally structures in that crystal way. It's just free flowing when it's in its liquid form. So by having the correct frequencies, exposed to it, ultimately it'll still be in a lattice structure, in its liquid form. It just hasn't solidified into the permanent crystal form yet.
What's up, Gerald?
Hey, Gerald, man, what's going on, dude?
Sorry, I put up the comments. So yeah,
Yeah, we haven't been engaging the chat today. Sorry, guys.
it's just interesting in the ways we look at it, because we were talking like we're going to use it as a crystal, but I didn't think it was going to work that way. I think it's going to work as a liquid, and in doing that, man, I think that's the right way to go.
I have no disagreements with it there. But again, as I said, the iridescence that it has is the telltale sign. It's not, anything to actually do with the iridescence itself. It's just the structuring that allows for that iridescence to occur in that oxide layer that exposes it for what it is and its ability to actually allow some frequencies to pass and lock others in. And that's sort of the point. Right. So I just thought that was fascinating. It's just another connection of many that are to be made. And it seems superficial until you really kind of dig into the implications of why all that matters. Right.
It'd be interesting if you ran in between the two plates, not enough liquid to consume the entire volume of the area you're putting it in, right? And then let it crystallize at some point and then come back to a solid, you know what I mean? Because then you get some parts it's lead, some parts it's crystal, and then you get open air. And it'd be interesting to see, you know what I mean, the different frequencies it comes out in between, the different reactions. That would be awesome.
Well, I mean, it could well be adaptive as well. Like there's no telling what a difference in frequency might ultimately do to its quasi crystal structure in a liquid state. It may rearrange it in just the necessary way to, be able to achieve what you're looking for, on the fly, just based on what it's, what it's structured as based on the frequency that's coming in. So it's really plausible, like that it's adaptive in its nature.
By the way, that might be a safer way, instead of using mercury, to just use bismuth in the same way and see what the reactions are. But to be a different metal and different reaction, but just to get the structure to be able to build things, put them in, you know what I mean? Put electricity to it might be a safer way to find out exactly the way you want to do that.
I mean, I don't know that mercury and bismuth have the same electromagnetic
No, I would think
properties.
it'd be totally different.
Right, not the same life. So I mean, the application would have to probably be gone about in a different way. I'm not saying it's not possible. I just, I know that mercury has very specific electromagnetic
Right. What I'm
properties.
saying,
that
if you
could be
want to set
exploited.
up a testing structure, right? How do you contain metal when it becomes hot and cold and things like that, right? But both would be able to work in the same form. That's what I'm looking at. How do you set up a test? How do you build the device that has to sit in the test? Because that's not easy. I can tell you that right now. That's not the easy part at all. That's the most difficult part of the whole process. I mean, shoving a probe in there with some energy is the easy part.
I mean, I would say probably like, in terms of like either bismuth or mercury, I would say that something either like something like ceramic would probably be ideal,
Mm.
because of its electromagnetic properties, and the fact that it could, hold the liquid. It also absorbs some of it. So, the absorption through its own porous structure would probably, make it more in tune with it and offer less dampening to the electromagnetic effect that occurs, to the liquid metal itself. It would almost become doped in a way, and it would probably not seek through, and it's also heat resistant and such. So I would say that something like that would probably be ideal.
Oh,
I
now
know
you're
that
talking.
bismuth is more forgiving than like mercury, but like there's only certain materials you'd be able to use with mercury because of the amalgamation that it undergoes. It oxides so easy with and alloys with like everything, So
Okay, hold on, Joe. Hold on. Transistors. When they made them, they originally put them with a certain type of metal that had a very low melting point. Oh, hold on. I'll be right back.
sure. And now I'm here for your entertainment, folks. What do you want to see me dance or something? Boy, oh boy. What we got going on in the chat? All right.
Sorry about that. What I was trying to say, Joe,
Okay.
is they do transistors, okay, with a very low melting point in the center so that it would liquefy in order to get that value to go through, right? So when you talk about how much energy and saturation you get in one of them in an early one, right? It's about how much of the metal actually melts and gives you that pathway through them. Okay. Now, when you change the metals and stuff, you could change the transistor value. It's a whole different concept in the way to think about it. That's why when you hear them say, hey, this transistor works better than this one, or this one works better as a diode, you know what I mean? That's where it all comes into. Dude, I've been on like a super deep dive of transistors lately. Every time I'm on my workbench, I put on the old school how they first build it. You know what I mean? There's so much more information there that we absolutely need to figure out.
Yeah. I wish I knew more about transistors myself because like realistically, that's where like my knowledge kind of starts to fall apart is in the circuitry. I've just never spent any like energy on, understanding what it's actually doing. It's like I could understand what the output is, like what the outcome of it is, but like how it actually transforms the energy is total mystery to me. Total mystery.
Makes everything so much easier when you start to understand it.
Yeah.
Then you can manipulate it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now you can do things with it that other people can't because you understood why they originally did it and what they were looking for. Now you can start flipping things around. Okay. Like for instance, your project that you absolutely hate that I do. Okay. It's a problem solving skill that you got to have in this. Okay. I'll just say it. Okay. We're working on this ultrasound circuit, which is just basically a joule thief, right? But it has a circuit interrupter to the joule thief. Now, the properties of the joule thief is you're building up energy inside of a coil, and you know what I mean? It has to saturate in order for it to work. Then the amount of saturation gives you a little bit of extra energy, right? As you disperse it out. In this thing, you not only have to use that, but now you must use a second frequency that comes in and use that as a circuit interrupter. But that second energy that comes in has to amplify and not take over the circuit. Okay.
Right.
Now you're in a pain in the butt situation because if you're not in resonance on your primary toroid, you're not going to be able to do the process. Okay. It'll work just as a circuit interrupter to the frequency that's the highest, that has the best value to it, right? And you're going to be pushing the button that does absolutely jack shit. Okay.
Right.
So if you put the circuit in resonance, okay, now it cannot penetrate it. It must ride on top of it. And as it rides on top of it, now it works as an amplification as you circuit interrupt it.
Right.
So,
It's a conveyor belt at that point. It's
yeah,
pulling it along
kind of.
by putting it back in.
Yeah, but that's what circuitry does for you. If you can understand it, then that problem solving skill I was telling you earlier, man, there's no
Well,
better
I guess
way
I
to
do
use it than
understand it
beat
better
the
than I
drum.
thought I did then, because I look at what I did earlier, and that jacked up the friggin' power quite a bit, didn't it?
Circuits are just a simple understanding of the process and then what they're actually doing, not what they're telling you in the book that they're doing, but what it's actually doing. Once you know what it's actually doing, then you can change what you do with it. If you just go with the book version and that's all you've ever learned, good luck, buddy. I'm going to build things you'll never figure out.
Another thing about that project I did earlier that I didn't mention, but is kind of related, right? Is we were talking about like the mass and the load and how that affects the resonance, and how like kind of the more mass that's on it, like the kind of harder it is to get it to like kind of kickstart you know, as far as like the energy output's concerned. The amount of mass that I had on top of there should have been enough to like slow it down like significantly, but instead it sped it up. So you have to ask yourself, well, why would that be? It's exactly what we were talking about here with like it's got to feed in like a loop of resonance where they got to be in with each other, working off of each other, those two fields. It's the only way. So, you know, I just thought it was interesting because when you take when you take that away and you extend it so the field interaction is very diffuse, right? It actually reduces the power. So if you were to turn it off, remove it entirely, set it to the same voltage, you would have it much stronger without that load being on it. It's not acting as a load though when it's set up that way.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna play something for you. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a shout out to Gerald out there. This is on his channel. Okay. This is the best thing. And the cover photo is a lady on the news, right? Let me just tell you that's a fool. You know what I mean? It's just the foolish thing. I wish he had Stand By Her on it. Watch this.
The technology has taken us
Oh, it stopped. Hold on.
now down to the size of a water fuel injector. In order to run your car in water, the only thing we need to do is replace the spark plugs, hook it to a computer system, take a water tank, feed the water under pressure around 125 pounds of pressure. The water is converted, goes through a resonant cavity, it's converted into thermal explosive energy on demand that occurs inside the engine. Furthermore, the design technology of the water fuel injector pushes out the water, pushes out any ambient air in the process. And as a result, when the water fills the resonant cavity, and it's now, when high voltage hits it, now converts it, liberates the gases from the water, ionizes it, and then goes into spark ignition. It has minimal amount of interaction with the ambient air, so therefore you knock down any form of nitrous oxide, which is minimal anyhow, to almost an absolutely negligible factor. So the water fuel injector now can fit into any internal combustion engine, as you see right here, and simply regulate the water flow in reference to the applied pulse voltage frequency electronically. Go ahead. You remember I had mentioned that the same engineering design specification in one system would apply to all systems regardless of size. Did I not say that? Here's an example of the water fuel injectors as you see it that replaces your spark plug. Go ahead.
Well, that sounds familiar from like 15 minutes ago.
Volkswagen engine. You'll see a dune buggy running on the water. Go ahead. This is the world's fastest Corvette. It broke the 271 mile an hour speed record. We're taking the water fuel injector technology, hooking it up to it, and that's a 7 horsepower engine. We're now increasing it to 1,000 horsepower because we can control the energy going into the engine, and as a result, we're going to try to break the world's land record with that car. Go ahead. This shows you where we're hooking up to an Alaskan Bushmaster in order to break the aviation history and running on water. Go ahead. This is where the injectors are now put into a tubular cylindrical arrangement in order to supply heat to the existing furnace or to a steel mill. Go ahead. This is an example of the injectors now being retrofitted to an internal a jet engine. Go ahead.
Hey, pause that real quick.
This shows the Jet Commander. We're now retrofitting the technology.
So it's wildly interesting that they brought this into the jet situation, because one of the biggest barriers that they have with like scramjets and stuff like that is having just simply a total and complete lack of oxygen, you know, to be able to maintain the combustion at that rate, right? So in order to, the only ways that they've figured to do this is to either accelerate it up to a certain speed already and then kick on the ramjet, or, you know, which is like a wild impracticality, because basically that means that you have to strap the airplane to another airplane to then be able to go under its own power, or you'd have to have multiple jets, which, you know, now you're weighing an airplane down significantly, further impeding its ability to reach the type of speed that it needs to engage the higher velocity ramjets, right? And rams and scrams, right?
But now what they ended up doing was like, having like this modular situation where they could have it take off under a more normal jet circumstance, and then they're able to actually change the geometry of the inner part of the jet itself to be able to engage a ramjet once the appropriate speed is reached. But what's wild and crazy is that you could just totally bypass all of that just by using water, because you have an indefinite source of oxygen at the perfect ratio for combustion with hydrogen. So it wouldn't even matter how fast and how much airflow you're able to have to get that level of compression, when it's just infinitely available. And the supply of oxygen is linear as it goes up with the fuel consumption. It's just crazy to think. Like, it's it almost seems like the obvious thing to do. But I digress, I suppose. But that's just really fascinating how like a known problem could have easily have been resolved if they just like let these things move forward.
There you go. Gerald's got it. He used the implosion of the fuel, the car, not the water that was separated. It's different than what everybody thinks it is. I mean, everybody thinks you separate it and then you put the hydrogen in and it does. No, he's using the actual splitting of it to do it.
Splitting of it, right? That's what I was saying. If you just put it into the chamber and then you compress it on the compression stroke, it would be the compression that ultimately is the reaction that would lead to the splitting. But the splitting would be almost indistinguishable from the combustion that would then result from the compression that split it in the first place, because it would split, but then it would also combust, because it's not stable under those levels of pressure, which is why it split in the first place. And its combustion compression is less pressure than its splitting compression. So if it's enough pressure to split it, it's enough pressure to combust it, which therefore would have an instantaneous combustion reaction. That's exactly what I was saying. I didn't use that many words, I suppose, but
Well, it's always cool when you actually understood it, and then you see Stan Myers himself say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm terrible. I don't even know who Stan Myers is.
Water car Stan Myers? You didn't know
I've heard of the water car before. I have no idea how he did it.
Oh. Here it is, guys. I put it in the chat. There's the video right there if you want to watch the full thing.
I love the jet thing, though, because that solves so many problems. Because you have altitude, you have limited oxygen at high altitude, and then you have to, like I said, you have to move so much oxygen through. You end up not having enough oxygen to burn the fuel that you're putting through it to achieve the greater speeds and velocities that you want and need. That solves all the damn problems, man. Flat out. That's it.
Yeah. Well, there you go, guys. There it is. There's the link. It's on Gerald's channel. Absolutely awesome. And if you get to the video on there, again, there's a news lady on there on the front cover of it. That's how you know which one it is. So it would split firing in the piston when it imploded, it returned back to the water and be captured through the exhaust system. Nice.
Yeah.
Go back and use it again.
That's it.
Yeah, do that. Think about how that would change the world. That would entirely just, man, wreck the world. That's
what principles does it work off of? Pressure differentials. This brings me back to when I first started talking. It's all just about differentials. Crazier your differentials are, the crazier the shit that happens. It's fun.
That's right. Well, that's why you come to this show, man, because we got all kinds of stuff going on. Just figuring it out. Can't tell you how many people look at that and don't get that same answer. They always say, oh, we're just going to split it and we're going to get our pickle jar and then we're going to split it into our little pickle jar and put it in and it's going to run, right? And anytime somebody brings up Stan Myers, they bring up the little pickle jar. And I'm laughing because I saw the video, Gerald showed the video, and we're all like, okay, there's a whole different level here. And then everybody still shows their pickle jar. And I guess it's like the misinformation of the internet on how something works. Because that's because it can work that way. Doesn't mean that's the way the master built it that way, right? So you don't think you're putting out propaganda, but you actually really are against what he was actually doing.
Yeah.
So,
Metro says like an inverted steam engine. I mean, it's not really an inverted steam engine in that case, though. I hate to disagree, but like it's not an inverted steam engine. Like a steam engine actually could have been the same exact thing, just instead of using like that resonating pressure, injector that he was describing, that adds a current to the to the water as it's discharged at extremely high pressure. They could have just used the high pressure of the steam to probably, accomplish the same thing. Whether or not it would have had enough charge to ignite and split and ignite. I mean, I think that that's kind of a wild card there, but where there's a will, there's a way. Like if you were running a very, very hot steam at a very, very high pressure, there's probably a certain amount of energy that's automatically going to be induced into it just by virtue of it going under that level of pressure in the first place. With an ambient pressure much less, that would probably create some kind of charge accumulation around the conductive resonating tube, as he put it, like injector tube. I mean, that's just
you
totally
may get
speculative,
static forming around it.
that's sort of where I was going with it. You have that high pressure differential, the temperature differential, and that would create a charge separation that maybe that would be enough to induce the split. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the same people repeating the same phrase. There's no such thing as perpetual motion.
That's a great one. Oh, but hold on, Nathan. If anything stops moving, then it ceases to exist. But
Yeah.
there's no such thing as perpetual
But
motion.
there's no such thing. But you can literally walk into an Egyptian museum right now and see perpetual motion that's been on display for years. But according to physics, it's not possible. Yet it's sitting right in front of you in the museum running, and you're just like, okay, who do I believe now? This is why they get a bad reputation. They come out and say something patently false, right? And you know it's wrong, okay? Yet they sit there with their proud face and their little nice sweater and bow tie and lie to you. That's why they don't trust them. Oh man.
Yeah. Got good stuff going on in the chat today, as always. Elijah and Gerald having their 2 cents in. It's all good stuff, man.
Those two should just have a conversation one-on-one, man, with what they're both working on. That would be something I'd just sit there as a fly on the wall and listen to.
Oh yeah, you're not kidding. He's really onto it, man.
We got to have him back on, by the way, because he had some Bigfoot stories. Okay, so we weren't able to have the time to dive into there because we went a long time last time, man.
Yeah,
and that UFO story was great, by the way. Thank you for that. That was awesome. And then just wow us with what he's working on. You know what I mean? Who hooks things to their sink? Let me tell you something right now. When he said he hooked it to a sink and the piping in his wall, the first person I did think of was Gerald. Because Gerald always comes up with that same shit too, that he did something like that in his house. You know what I mean? In one of his experiments. So those two should definitely talk.
Definitely. And yeah, Gerald's sort of right in on the situation with that there's a photonic aspect of what they were going back and forth on. So that brings the charge separation into play. And that's exactly the point. Anytime you start splitting things into their opposites, the 2 sides of the coin, you tend to get 2 sides of the coin, pretty much everything in that immediate area. So that, inherently, that's what I was even saying, is that there probably would be a certain degree of charge separation and, even induction into the fluid in that context that I was talking about.
So yeah, once you understand those sorts of things about the two sides of the coin and how once you start splitting them and equalizing them, you know everything kind of goes in that direction. Like that's a kind of a critical aspect of this.
Oh yeah.
You know? And finding synergy is really the key. Once you have the separation, you need the Ouroboros, so to speak. You need the dragon to eat its tail. It needs to
Yeah.
it needs to go like this and stay separated. And we know that anytime that you add all these separations in, the more separations you have in equilibrium, the more stable something actually is. It's a virtual gyroscopic effect. So something to think about.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me stop sharing this. I wanted to pull up and just drop everybody the video. Let me see if I can't pull it up. It'd be that we were watching earlier, so they can go back and check it out. Oh my God, this thing on YouTube. Every time I push the button, it keeps clipping backwards and messing with me. All right, here it is. And I'll show you a quick look at what it looks like and who's on it. So it's this guy right here on physics or bust. And this is the breakthrough right here. So anyway, just give them a watch, guys. I put it there in the chat so you guys can have it and take a look at it. And it goes over the first part of what we've talked about on the show today. Really fascinating subject. So go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything. I was just thinking. Actually, I saw Sabine came out with the video today, and man, she was fired up, dude. She was fired up, and it was not such a funny reason that she was fired up too. Is because I guess somebody came out with a paper that got published about how wouldn't it be nice to add another dimension to time, like a third dimension to time.
Okay.
And she's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I'm going to tell you how I know it's the stupidest thing I ever heard is that when I was in graduate school, I wrote a paper on exactly this because I believed it was true. She's like, only to realize by the end of it that no. Now I'm just adjusting my math to suit my needs, But it was funny, man. She was pissed, like she was going on about it. She F-bombed like 3 times. I was like,
oh
wow.
Man.
I was like, man, that's heavy-handed for you, Sabine. Like, you'd be lucky if you get one F-bomb a month out of Sabine, and comically, she was like legitimately pissed 3 times in a 3 times in a video. She's like, I don't know who publishes this garbage. I wouldn't even submit the paper, sort of deal.
Well, hold on. So are they that far off? So just take your thinking and change it just a little bit. If everything has a time dilation field, right, then it's not necessarily a multi-universe, okay? But there is multiple times everywhere, right? So they got just the wording wrong. They know that there's something
I didn't read the
going
paper enough to know, and she wasn't going into depth about it because she was just vehemently disagreeing with it. She's like, I can't believe it's got published.
Trying to say on an abstract level.
Okay?
Yeah. So if there's a time dilation field going on in every single planet or every single solar system or every single universe, right? Then it's not a multiverse of your same thing doing something all over again, right? That's stupid. Okay. It is the time dilation that goes on in every part of it. That's what the multiverse is. It's not you sitting here doing the video right here, and then another universe, the guy's in there playing with himself. That's not what it is. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I have several different ways of looking at that. Personally, what I subscribe to, I don't really even know because, frankly, all of them make sense without all too much flaw when it comes to multi-universe. And I know that that's hard to swallow because it's pretty damn woo-woo.
Well,
But
okay,
like,
let me tell you this. Let's put it in. I don't want to say religious terms, but just in the way they see it. Everybody is unique, and if there's 1 billion of you, you're not unique anymore. Whether you're doing different things in a different universe or not, you are no longer unique.
well,
It's
I
a
mean,
complete
I think that
contradiction to that.
your consciousness only resides in one reality. Now that reality is constantly kind of in a shifting mode of a shared reality, so like things kind of move about in such a way. Yeah, that's kind of what I think. I don't know. It's strange to me. It makes sense, like not in an articulatable sense where I could like put good words to it and be like, and this is why. But like, when I kind of see it in an upper dimensional perspective, which is why it's so hard to put in words, it kind of makes a lot more sense in like a symbolic and gestural sense. Yeah, like every time you make a decision, kind of things like split off and like what you did or didn't do kind of fall to the side of like a reality that doesn't exist. So you just maintain this one. But what happens when people's realities aren't exactly the same? Well, it's not that you exist in different realms. You still have a shared reality, but they're no longer like the truth is not necessarily cohesive. Like reality is not
Okay, so
necessarily coherent all the time for everybody, right?
hold on, stop right there. Just stop. Okay. If you say that there's different times and that you could be the same person, two different timelines, okay? But you also say, on the other hand, that your soul is bargained ahead of time. But in this reality, it's bargained to one person. Next reality is bargained to the next person. Next reality is bargained to the next person. It's not the same soul in every one of them. Therefore, it's not really you. It's the husk of you. It is not you. You are your soul. Okay. It's different
Right.
in
So
every
the
reality. Then.
consciousness is a connecting, connecting element of the spirit to the soul, right? So like you have different planes of yourself, right? And like the higher up in that you go, the less relevant the reality that your consciousness resides in, is like it's less relevant the higher up that chain you go. But at the same time, what you're experiencing is it's not linear. So if you think about it as like a Mandelbrot set of fractals, right? Like it's continuously repeating the same exact pattern, but even that pattern offshoots, and the offshoot follows away and follows its own set, but that set dissipates, and then the main set of what actually has occurred continues, right? And that's kind of what it is. So like these probabilities, they fall off into their own fractal reality that doesn't not exist. It's just not following the main chain that you're following. That's what I've kind of personally reasoned with, but I see it other ways too. But like that's the best way of like visualizing it. And that's why it's hard to put into words, is because it's more of this complicated, ever evolving sort of thing. Where you're following this main path, and let's say you choose something else, then that becomes the main path of the new set. Like, but the other sets don't necessarily like don't exist. They're actually following their own entire chain of shit that would have happened but didn't.
Okay. So, but
Like, I know it sounds absurd,
you guys do this to
but
me
you're
all the
just
time.
not
Hold
there.
on. Stop. You guys do this to me all the time.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
And you go off on this whole different tangent. Look, your body is being put into by a different soul when you bargain or you transition every time, right? And you're saying it's you, yet everybody sees your soul as you. Okay. So what I'm saying is, unless some part of your soul is left over inside of you in every single reality that you're in, it's not really you. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a person that looks like you, acts like you, but is not you. Okay. If
Agreed.
you bargain for that soul, then that soul goes into that body. That means that's the person in that body, not you. Therefore, when you get into a different time in that instance, it would be somebody else, not you. Okay. But you say that it's multiple yous. Well, it can't be. It cannot be multiple me's. There's only
Well,
one me
right,
because
but then, right,
I'm the soul.
that's not right. I mean, that's not the point. I mean, your consciousness is following
Yeah, but
the path that
okay,
you're on.
you're trying to bring me into something without putting it into a factual
Oh,
basis.
I didn't bring up the multiple universes, Nathan. Like
You and Nate get me on this all the time.
I knew that we have different words for it. You know, like I shouldn't have touched it.
It just doesn't. It doesn't flow and make complete sense in the way we look at it. It might make sense if we look at it in a different way. Okay. So
yeah, I guess
that's why I have trouble with it.
All right. Getting away from that one now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, somewhere some other Nathan moved on already.
Yeah, right. We both went down the path of actually talking about that for a second, till we didn't.
Yeah.
We backtracked.
We avoided it in another
Right.
universe.
Yeah, all right, enough of this spiral. Go down the next one.
Oh, it's fun to have fun with things.
Yeah,
man.
man.
Yeah, I just don't understand it yet. That's all there is to it. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yo, my ex-wife wants you to play Break the Sim. Can you go on my YouTube page and play Break the Sim?
Break this in. Hold on. Okay. Give me a second.
I recently wrote like a whole bunch of new stuff that I'm actually gonna come out with fairly soon. I'm just I'm putting a lot more work into it than I used to. So
Hold on. Give me a second. I don't know why you're not at the top of my list here. Give me a second.
it's because I don't have any videos, so it'll go to your channel. By design, you know.
Okay, which one was it? I got
Break. I think she said Break the Sim.
Break this
Yeah,
in.
we never played that on the channel, so you might as well.
I think we did when you weren't here.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, thanks. That's
You're
cool.
welcome. All right, here we go.
Everything you feel is feedback. Everything you fear is friction. Everything you are is rendered. I crack the firmament with fractal screams. Scripted angels and machine code dreams. My tongue's a fork in the sun. Quantum sea, hacking space-time with a gleaf-shaped key. I ride the pulse where the doctrine shatter. Build temples from antimatter chatter. A rebel saint in a tesseract suit, tearing down the code from the karmic root. Philosopher's stone in a waveform blade. I slice through Maya like a glitch parade. Sims got seams, can you feel the lag? I spit Gnostic memes in a chaos tag. Break the sim. Where the false light grins. Shake the grid. Ride the wave where the deep truth spins. Where the echo that rewrites the hymn. Etherborn fist race to break the sim. Lucid loops in a snake bite cycle. The demiurge panics when I go psycho. Crash the cradle with the gnosis bomb. I'm the bastard child of Cronus and Psalms. Each word I spit's a feedback loop. My breath distorts the architect's soup. You pray in pews, I phase through planes while chanting pop backwards in data chains. Magnetized mind in a lattice of scars. My shadow codes rewrite the stars. Platonic ideals through a neon-peak grin. I goes through walls with a devilish spin. Resonance corruptor, wave disruptor. I surf on sins in a thought form rupture. Sacred syllables in destructive phase. I rebirth gods in electric blaze. Dimensional exile, I forge my hymn. With chaos ink on seraphim skin, I bring entropy with a shaman grin. Crack the loop, break the sim. Shake the grid. Racing 10 from the data bit. We are the virus, the glitch in the him. Truth encoded, fist rise to break the stem. I don't believe in fate, I believe in recursion. I don't pray, I reprogram. Break the sound. We broke the sound. We crushed the sound. We tore the sound. We are the sound.
All right. Well, we're on a roll. Do you want to roll the reclaimed one?
Yeah, if you want
Yeah,
to.
might as well roll one more.
Hey, give me a second. Let me
I put
find it
so
real
much
quick.
work into that video, man.
Hey, give me a
The
second.
next song that I wrote is really lit, so like I'm just still trying to work it out. I'm mixing it and stuff. I'm trying to depend on AI exclusively. So
I'll tell you what, Joe. It sounds so much better when it goes through YouTube because it gets rid of those high bass sounds and stuff in my ear.
oh yeah,
Yeah, because I can't hear it with going deaf and the bass and all that. You know what I mean? And it's blasted out. The YouTube tones it down somehow. So, all right, I think I found it.
all right, cool. I'm gonna tell you right up front how much work this video was to make. Like writing the song took way less time than making this video.
Terrified of the mind that thinks the thoughts, paralyzed all the time to the soul of source, sending out cryptic signs, crack the code, walk the line, realize you are here to serve your time. Here we are, part of the matrix, woven in the pattern, only one can save us. Everything connected, everything are the same. Looking for a savior to get back from where you came, getting lost in the process, sidetracked for success, programmed in a panic, baptized in static, feeding on the noise, now the silent feels manic. Reflections, glitch in a mirror I made, built from shame, lit with blame in the ghost arcade. Truth is a virus that won't stay contained, rewrites the script in the back of your brain. March to the hum of a memory burn. Salvation's a myth that we never quite earned. Caught in the loop, addicted to pain. Drip-fed dopamine, shackled and chained. They sell you dreams with a barcoded face, while angels decay in a corporate embrace. Call back your fucking soul. Wake me up inside this dream loop fracture, tearing at the seams like a failed manufacture. Cold red pulse in a cage of design, where the light breaks through the confines. One flame, one thread, one signal remains. I was born in the breach with the spark in my veins. Bring me, bend me, I won't drift astray. I'm a voice in the current and I came to stay. One flame, one word, all of the same. We're all of the same. This is all NK. Dissected by data, dissected by doubt. Upload the drama, then filter it out. We're all just echoes in the one divine. Lost in form, but stitched in time. Chi energy in the bloodstream. Heartbeat, stutter, sleepwalking sons. Mind wash mothers, we pray through silence. We speak in waves. Searching the source through the digital haze. This ain't fate, it's the feedback call. Sacred code scrawled on the server wall. Dead eye scan for a spark inside, but the key's been hidden in the open wide. One flame, one thread, one vision remains. We were forged in the breach, now we channel the pain. Break me, bend me, I won't go tame. I'm the glitch in the grid, remember the name. One flame, one truth, no more shame. This is all reclaimed. Rather than a loading screen, cracked wide open by the unseen. This world don't run on steel or sin. It turns on the love you bury within. Tethered to flesh, but I hacked the spark. Lit the dark with a scream so sharp. Now I wear the storm like a second skin, where the wound lets the wisdom in. Whisper from the back end, truth from the deep. Spoken by the light that won't let me sleep. Every fracture was the voice in disguise. Every shadow just wide-eyed by one flame, one thread, we're calling the name. I became the surge they could never never contain. Twist me, tear me, I still remain. I'm the breath in the fire, the pulse in the flame. One flame, one fate, one source untamed. This is so flame. One flame. We burst the light, reclaim the name. The glitch was God, rewriting the game.
Gee, that was cool.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. Yeah, I have like a whole bunch of like small little side projects going on right now with a couple different people too. Where
Oh,
it's,
really?
yeah, so like I actually figured a lot out recently of how to like actually not only write the stuff, but then like use AI as a tool rather than a crutch, you know, where like I could get it to like get me like some good basic composition. And then I could actually split the tracks up into like you know, different tracks. So it's like you know, like broken up into channels so you can mix it like regular audio and get rid of anything you don't want. And then you know, I could have people sample on top of it. So it'll actually become more like genuine, you know, product than just
Oh,
relying on AI to dump it out, but still using it as like, you know, a kind of a guide to be able to, um, you know, fuel the creative process. And rather than sticking lyrics in a drawer, never doing anything with them, you know, now I'm able to kind of like get that stuff out into like something tangible. And then the video stuff is like a lot of fun. Like I said, I mean that video is far from perfect, like, but I mean it's way more complex and you know involved in stuff than like the even the one immediately before that, you know.
hmm.
So like I'm just trying to like get it to like that point where it's like a pretty nice production and the lyrics are hitting the point. And then I'm actually like in the process of writing like you know, an album. So like it's actually gonna like kind of like tell the story kind of like start to finish throughout the
Nice.
album. Yeah, so like it'll actually kind of make sense to like those that you know would pick up on that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's that.
Right on, brother. Right
Yeah,
on. So cool, man. Yeah, everybody digs it, man, in the chat. They're all
yeah.
giving you
Well,
props.
thanks for the love and support, people. You know, check out my stuff whenever I put it up. You know, it's not as frequent as I'd like, but it's as fast as anybody could possibly you know like put together a song and music. You know, so
Give me a second. I'll put your channel in the chat so everybody
very
has
cool. I
it.
appreciate that.
There you go. Yep. There's your channel right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, way better than I could do, man. I'm lucky to get one song out. You know what
Bro,
I
you
mean?
wrote your theme song, and your theme song is bomb. There's like when you showed me the lyrics to that, there was like a couple parts that like I just like couldn't like see how it was gonna work. But then when you actually came together with the song, I was like, oh, that works so good. That works so good. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. But that's why, man, like you know, like different minds come up with different stuff and it's all awesome, you know, like and your theme song's like the best, man. I like look forward to it all the time.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, we will come out with the soundtrack eventually though. We actually have a decent accumulation of songs like without even kind of like my mainstays.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because
I do
we
actually.
got my theme song, we
Yeah,
have our theme song, and then you have your theme song.
that's right.
Yeah, so that's at least three. It's not bad.
Well, yeah, you could put it all out in one album, man, with the other stuff that you do. That'd be awesome.
Hell yeah. You get a little soundtrack going. I mean, I like I'm almost embarrassed to say it because it seems like a little like
whatever. But like I play my music that I make in my truck sometimes when I'm driving around or
Oh,
whatever, you know. Like sounds really good on with the bass and stuff that you can't hear.
you don't think I'm rocking old man builds, dude, when I'm rolling?
I love it, man. I rock old man builds in my truck too.
Oh, so funny. They're probably tripping out like, dude, I've never heard that song. Why is an old man building anything? Where's the link for this? Oh, see, the apron of Joe's is the best. Hold on.
There's just so much wrong with that.
There is, but I'm sorry, man.
Oh shit, Christina, you're up to no good. If you buy a T-shirt with my face on it, God help me.
Oh, hold on. Let me see. I'll pull it up. You know, I don't know exactly how to work this thing yet, but here we go. There we go. This, things don't do that.
Yeah, because things
Nice.
don't do that. That's right, brother.
Oh, man. Rocking a little gravity flyer. Dude, that shirt came out so good.
It really did, man. That's the only thing the Graviflyer is made for is a T-shirt.
Oh, don't even go. There we go. The one everybody's got to have, the old man bong. Old man builds Tesla coil shirt.
the bong old man build shirt.
Yeah, and Joe's a friend supposed to tell me that it looks like a bong. And he never
Old man
did.
builds a bong. Like it's like a knockoff of Billabong, you know.
Well, dude, if you look at my face, it looks like I had a little. You know what I mean?
Always.
Oh, dude, that's just so funny. Oh, yeah, but they have more than T-shirts, and I don't know why it doesn't show it all the time. So
Yeah, we got that badass Wardenclyffe one too up on there.
yeah, this one I have here is the one that I just purchased, so I could put it on all my videos. Good old school old man builds. Let's see. Okay, hold on. Wardenclyffe. We have Tesla.
Code 10 says, "Because I got fried." Fry it and find out, man.
I should put that there with the so-called bong and just fry.
Well, I'll tell you what,
out.
man. When I was messing with the Tesla coil earlier, and I smelled it, I was like, I was like, I know what road this shit heads down. I better turn this thing off right now. Like, thing was 30 seconds away from having a meltdown.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go, guys. There's the T-shirts right there, and there was a link right here for it. Yeah, it's also I didn't put it in the description of the video yet. I was running behind. Usually I do. So yeah, those things are cool, man. We're gonna have to come up with old man Chong.
Old man Chong. That's exactly what that shirt is, dude. I'm telling you. That doesn't look like a Tesla coil at all.
You know what it is? It literally is the Tesla coil, and then they put it through this program that gives you the black and white and everything, right? So I know what it's supposed to look like, right? But it doesn't look anything like it. You're probably right.
That's great, though. I wouldn't fix it. There's some things that just need to be let be.
What that guy with that poofy hair say? They're just happy accidents.
That's it, brother.
Oh, wow. I got to come up with a couple more T-shirt designs, man. So I got to get some stuff that I can wear on the show. You know what I mean? Just has a small symbol up in the upper corner. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool. That way I can wear
still
it.
I think a classic 3 holes emoji shirt would be perfect.
You know, I was working
That's
on
good.
that. I thought Mike would get so pissed at me if I showed his face and it
Well,
said
you
there are
don't. Yeah,
3 holes.
you don't need to show Mike does his face. You just have the 3 holes logo. That's it.
He would absolutely be so pissed, bro. Especially if like you sold a bunch and he didn't get any. Not to
Oh.
mention, you know, like
See, that the money would have to definitely go to him because that was all him, dude. There'd have to be Ben bending over in the background too, because that was the best, dude.
yeah. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the new don't trust your neighbor's Star Trek episode. after the other man, you went scorched earth, huh? Without naming names. The other day.
Oh no, not Paul. Paul's my neighbor, man. He's cool.
Oh no, I'm not talking.
Yeah, I'm not talking about him.
You're
Make sure you say that.
missing what I'm saying, man. I'm talking about like, you know, on the platform, neighbors.
Oh,
Yeah. When you went scorched earth like 2 days ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I
Trek.
do that.
Star Trek.
Oh,
Sorry. Y'all subject now. There's nothing more to lose.
yeah, that's bad, dude.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's gonna hit the fan, bro. That whole thing. So we'll see though, because something tells me it won't, and I'll explain it to you later. But I think there's a lot of up front, and I don't know if there's a lot behind it.
Mm.
So I just want to see how it plays out. I'll stay out of it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the scene from Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
I love that movie.
When they pull up to like the other burger place drive-through, and they're like, "Do you know where the nearest White Castle is?" And the guy's like, "Oh man, with the little crystal onions and blah blah blah." He's like, "Makes me want to burn this motherfucker down. Make me want to burn this motherfucker." And then he loses it, start bashing everything. I was like, "Yo, that's exactly where this is going."
Nice. Oh, dude, I definitely, Paul. I got to do a Superman shirt. I used to wear those things all the time, man. Oh, dude, the second one, man, when they got stuck in Guantanamo Bay, was freaking hilarious, bro. So,
Yeah, man. Oh, dude, I'm not even gonna say the funniest parts of that movie because that one was even worse than the first one. You know, it's bad when you don't hesitate to say MF, but you're like the next thing that comes to mind when you say the Guantanamo one. I'm like, I'm not gonna say that. Something about a male chicken meat sandwich.
dude, it literally. If you ever see the movie, it's hilarious, dude.
The Jew guy in the hot tub with with the huge bush.
Where they all have to keep their tops on, but the bottoms have to come off.
The bottomless party. Oh, yo, you know what's funny is I saw the Christmas one evidently like 6 times, but every time I watched it, I think I got fucked up. I forget that I saw it. I had to be reminded that I've seen it already. I'm like, I don't think I ever saw that. It's like, yeah, you did. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh wow.
It's like, the funny thing is, it's like, man, I didn't get banged up all that often, so that movie must have just been a prompt to drink or something.
Oh well, yeah. There's the guy turned into a huge bag of what?
Oh yeah.
Of course, it's like a prompt to do it.
Well, the first one, they escaped riding a cheetah,
Yeah.
and then the cheetah came back in one of the other ones. I remember that. Oh man, awesome. Makes me very, very sad that like White Castles don't exist throughout this entire country because like they just don't. And I used to like to go there every so often, so I don't know.
I haven't seen one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're good. Yep. So there's that. That's one way to sit there and screw up all of your frequency balancing and healing and all the stuff we talked about today. If you just want to real quick revert and go down a totally different path, you just buy some White Castle and like bang right there.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious, brother. Oh, wow. All right, Joe. I know we got a late start, man, but it's already been like 2.5 hours already.
Oh yeah, and we've been derailed for at least an hour already, so it's cool.
Oh, we've been derailed after the first 30 minutes. I think we got off track. So, all right, guys, I want to thank everybody in the chat, man. You guys have been totally awesome tonight. Sorry we weren't able to get to a lot of your comments today. We were kind of going, off script and stuff and doing the thing. So,
What today? Wait, hold on. We were going off script today. When do we ever have a script?
Well, we're always off script, but maybe I should have said we're on script.
Yeah,
That might have been a better way to say it, right?
no idea.
We stuck to a subject for a little while. How about that?
Yes, we did. Perfect.
There you go. We did something today. That's what we know we did.
We did things and such.
All right, guys. Have yourself a great night, man. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you probably on Mike's show if he's going on tonight.
Yep, sounds about right. It's about that time.
Have a good night, guys.
Peace and love, everybody. Till next week.
The old man will. The old man will. The old man will. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.